Hello, this is Mike, NoStressMike.com. I want to talk about fighting. I believe most people, when they think of fighting, they're thinking of a particular kind of fighting. For me, I look at all types of fighting, and I practice different types of fighting. And a lot of times when I'm giving examples on different techniques, holsters, different carries, concealed carries and open carry, and why particular weapons and this type of stuff, I am thinking of a particular kind of fighting. Fighting is not a general thing. There's specific techniques that are used in each type of fighting, and this is what I want to talk about. Okay, I want to start with play fighting. When you're in my house, when my kids were little, we would roll around on the ground and, in the grass, and sometimes I'd throw them on the bed, and it'd be kind of like a wrestling kind of thing. And what was going on during this time is the same thing like animals. When small animals are playing with each other and they do all their stuff, they have to learn how to these skills to defend themselves, animals. And so then they kind of fight each other and this type of stuff, but they don't hurt each other. And that's where they learn. That's why when an animal doesn't have any brothers and sisters when they're little, it's hard for them to understand they can play too hard and they can hurt someone. So this is one of the reasons why I roll around with my kids, to let them, so it's like they know what it's like when somebody attacks them. And even though we're just rolling around this type of stuff and it's fun and all this kind of stuff, they are getting the sense of what a contact is all about. So that's what they're looking at on that. Now, as they get older, they're in school, and I know nowadays it's illegal or whatever to fight. But when you're in your youth, they sometimes you have to use physical fighting, physical contact. And the reason is, when you're in your youth, you're learning the pecking order in life. Okay, and what you're learning is, are you going to be a victim when you grow up, or are you going to be a bully, or are you going to be somewhere in between? And this is what's happening when they get in their little pushes, and maybe somebody will cold cock somebody or something, when they're in their youth. And so sometimes they'll get right up in your face and start, all this kind of stuff. These are all ways they're trying to figure out how they're going to intimidate people. They'll get up in your face and intimidate you. And what are you going to do when they get up in your face? And so there's all kinds of things that are going on in your youth. Now, for me personally, I don't really care, and I told my kids, just do whatever they got to do. And my thinking was, they're youngins. They don't know how to do permanent damage. More than likely, the most damage they're going to do is a tooth. Knock out somebody's tooth. That's more than likely going to be it. When they're young, they tend to bounce pretty good. So, when you get older, you throw me on this concrete here, it'll hurt me. But when you're young, it just seems like they kind of bounce. But like I say, the one thing that I thought would probably be the worst thing, like break an arm or knock out a tooth. If you hit somebody and they fall and they break their arm or something like that, So any one of these things, I'm more than willing to pay for, because just whatever, a couple, 2 or 3 or 4,000, 5,000, whatever it takes, is worth that. Just knowing that my child learned to stand for themselves. They've learned, okay, I'm going to get in this scuffle, and whatever happens, happens. Okay, what it is, they've prepared themselves in the way of in the pecking order, and they are giving themselves mental strength and emotional strength, and all this stuff comes out really good. And then when they don't do anything wrong and somebody came to them and they ended up having to use physical force to defend themselves, what they just learned was moral strength. They've got the obligation to take care of themselves. They've got the obligation to do what they got to do to defend themselves. And it only cost me a few $1,000s. How do you teach something like that? You can't. The world has to teach them that. Things that happen in the world. Okay. All right. Now, once they get to that point, now this is where I get kind of foggy. Okay. At 18, I was in Vietnam. At 18, I was killing people. So, I really don't know the steps on how that works from that point. But when I was in my youth, like I say, we had racial problems and this type of stuff. So like I say, it was 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 against me when I was a child. So that is not combat, not like the combat that I saw in Vietnam. The fighting, the physical combat I did in Vietnam was completely different than anything that I've come across anywhere. And it's I don't know if it can get worse. I say a handful of us going against a whole bunch of them. But the thing is, we were holding a position, and they would try to come into our position to kill us. So it makes a difference when you're holding a position. The way I was able to get through it is I looked at it as self-defense. I was defending myself, defending my location. This is where I came up with the idea of the three-man militia, because they are not a fighting force. A three-man militia is not a fighting force. It can be a fighting force, but that's not the purpose of the three-man militia. Now, the threats that come against the three-man militia would be a fighting force. So, in other words, you wouldn't go up against somebody in their own home, taking care of their own family, unless you were the threat and you were going after them. It has nothing to do with self-defense. So you are a fighting force when you're going up against something like that. So that's one way of looking at it. The fighting force is coming to you as you're in a three-man militia. Okay, the same thing when you're walking down the street. You are not in combat as you're walking down the street. But four guys come out and no firearms, and they're going to mug you. Okay, they are a fighting force. They're not the same type of fighting force that I mentioned about going against the three-man militia or the fighting force that I faced in Vietnam. So, but it is a fighting force. Now, they're going to use more intimidation more than anything. That's the idea. That's why there's 4 of them. One didn't come by himself. He brought his 3 buddies. Okay. And they need to show a force. Now, if he did it by himself, he'd probably come with a knife or a gun or some kind of a weapon. And now that would be a different type of a fighting force that you're going up against. So in other words, if a handful of guys are coming to me unarmed to mug me, or I teach counterterrorism, counter kidnapping. So in other words, if these however many are trying to abduct me for whatever reason, they're not really a fighting force, because their goal isn't to kill me. Their goal is to take me. Okay, this is where, and see, so can you tell the mental difference between all of these different types of threats? If you're looking, like say in Vietnam, they wanted to kill us, is what the point was. So their tactics are different than it would be when, like I say, some of them want to kidnap me. Their tactics would be a whole lot different, because they're not looking to kill me. Okay, and then robbing you would be the same thing. They're not looking to kill you, they're looking to mug you, to rob you, this type of stuff. So the mentality is different. The thinking, the tactics used are different from mugging to abducting to killing. Okay, and I better mention this too, the bullies. Bullies have another way of doing it also. Their intent is more for intimidation. They are prepared to fight, but you've heard me say this in my other videos, nobody wants to be hurt. So the bully will be prepared to fight, but he's more than likely not going to go towards somebody that there's a chance he's going to be hurt. What he wants to do is, like I say, intimidate. He's bullying you. That's what it is. So his tactics would be different than a fighting force would be. Even though he would be ready to fight, but he's thinking he's already got you overwhelmed. This is why he doesn't mind fighting you. A bully is not going to go up against 2 or 3 badasses. He's not going to try to bully them. Because like I say, he knows there's a better chance he might have a physical contact and he's going to get hurt. So when you're dealing with a bully, it's a different type of a threat, but it is still a threat no matter what. Even if it is just an emotional intimidation type of a threat, it's still a threat. So that's why when I'm talking about doing some of the stuff that I do in the way of combat, when I talk about the different, like I say, 3-man militias and different things like that, I try to set it up where you have an idea of what kind of threats there are and the mentality of these threats, because it really changes. If somebody, and that's what I tell you, when you come to me and you pull out a weapon, right when you pull out that weapon, I realize right then it's going to be one or the other. Either you want to kill me, like it's an assassination, or it'll fall under the intimidation, mugging, bullying, whatever it is. Okay. Now, if you don't kill me at that time, I'm taking it for granted that you're a wimp, because you need a weapon. Okay, so then, and I know weapons, and I made a video talking about understanding weapons. And so I understand the weapon, you just don't realize what you got yourself into. So I will go up against you no matter what, even if it's a firearm. It doesn't make any difference at all. There are tactics you can use to go against people like that. Now, if they are, like I say, in the 3-man meet and greet, and we have people that are attacking us or wanting to take our position, that is different. Those people will kill you. In other words, they're not going to pull their weapon out to intimidate me. They're going to kill me. So, but like I say, if you don't, then I know there's room to negotiate, and you're looking for intimidation. And that's going to try to sway that intimidation to you, and you don't have to fight. That's why you brought the weapon. That's why I get a little irritable about the police when I make videos talking about the police and the military and stuff like that. I mean, they have weapons. They have a support system. There's a lot of them. And so when they politely ask you for things, that is just something that kind of goes along with when they go to court, because really, they really don't care, because they're going to use force against you. And if you think I'm just dreaming all this stuff up, you try to tell them just to forget it, you're not going to do it, and you're going to find yourself, first you're going to be abducted, arrested, then you're going to be fined, and maybe even incarcerated. And any one of these steps that you choose you don't want to do, you will be killed. So, and it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. Now the court systems back up the police for using deadly force. So this is what happens. But anyway, you have to realize there are different kinds of threats and different kinds of fights. And you have to prepare yourself for each one of them at their level. And be prepared to do what you got to do on each one of those. And the way you do it is having moral strength. The moral strength will get you through whatever you have to do one way or the other. This is Mike, NoStressMike.com.